Welcome back to Rock Guitar Confidential with Scott and Ryan. On today's episode, are you easily offended? If so, well, you should keep listening. Controversy in rock coming up next.
I think artists in general tend to kind of let their hearts on their sleeves. They kind of let, their emotions kind of flow a little bit more naturally than your average, normie.
We're all just a bunch of walking wounds.
Well, it's true. I mean, to make art and put it out in the world is this bare part of yourself to the entire world for judgment. That takes a huge amount of courage, man. It really does, And
a fair dose of, I don't give a shit.
Well, some people do though. That's the thing. Some people really do give a shit, and they put it out there, and they really want approval basically from the people hearing it, or they want to be affirmed. Like, this is, yes, what you're doing has value or something like that.
I think the trick is just getting to the point where that's not the main thing.
You have to be able to get to that point because not everyone's going to love what you do. I mean, to make anything, think of anything that's made in any way. Like, there's people who love it and there's people who hate it, and then there's going to be the whole gamut of every which way in between, whether it's arts or whatever.
Right.
They have like a car, like, this car is the greatest car. This car sucks. It's like, there's like anything. This can of Pepsi. This Pepsi's shit. It's like, no, it's the greatest thing ever. I'm going to build a religion based on it.
New Coke is my favorite.
Exactly.
Well,
Crystal Pepsi is the future.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. Like, take any endeavor in human life, there's going to be haters and people who love it. You know what I mean? So to do art, you have to just bake that into the cake. There's going to be a whole bunch of people who this is not for them. You know what I mean? That's just the way of anything in human endeavors. You know
right.
I mean?
Well, and as the 90s taught us, you can make complete and utter garbage and everyone might love it.
That's true. A lot of people, then didn't have as much refined taste as they do now. But that's in pre-Megan Thee Stallion days. You know what I mean?
It was pre-Garth Apocalypse.
You and I have to talk about that at some point. I don't agree with you.
I totally did. Man,
that's a podcast coming soon where we'll get in there and
I've got my sights set on New Country.
I know, and I don't. I think that New Country was like just a side effect of the bigger issue. But anyway, what we need to talk about.
I think it factors into today's topic.
Yes, exactly. So, by the way, welcome to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Brian and Scott. Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Hi, I'm Ryan.
I'm Scott. Yeah.
Yep. And this is the Rock Guitar Confidential
exactly.
podcast.
So that's what
just in case you didn't know.
You probably heard the intro before this too, so you got a chance to understand it then too. But
I'm glad we were clear about that.
Exactly. Just so you know, as you're busy subscribing, which hopefully you're doing right now, hitting that button, subscribe,
mashing that like
exactly.
button.
Well, the like, you can like us now. Just subscribe. We just need the algorithm to appreciate what we're doing.
But we
and comment and rate. That's the other.
But we're totally self-validated. Okay,
exactly.
So mash that like button, but
it doesn't mean anything to us if you don't.
But if you don't, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So try to be consistent. That's not easy to do.
Yes. So today's topic, just very broadly.
Yes.
Controversy in rock.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is like the controversy is sort of inextricably woven with rock and roll. Rock and roll is supposed to be controversial. It's supposed to be dangerous outsiders music, that kind of thing. And
it's supposed to be the language of rebellion.
Yeah, exactly. Which no one's rebelling anymore in the United States, dude. Like,
no,
unless it's rebelling against paying for Netflix. That's something that people rebel against.
Yeah, dude. We're living in an age of not enough rebelling.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, or rebelling over things that truly don't matter at all. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to make sure that all, fries are done in vegan oil or something. It's like, that's like, we'll protest until this is done. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Not that there's not a lot of valuable things to protest about. There definitely are. But it feels like the idea of like, I am just going to do my thing and everyone else can just go to hell and I don't care what you think. That doesn't really exist anymore, I don't think. You know what I mean? And
and there's not... Well, I guess one of the reasons rock isn't in the mainstream is that it's not, it's not standing for anything, right? We've talked about that a little bit, and it's not,
Well, it's seen as music as of the establishment now. Like people who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, like, grew up listening to rock music. So if you're 20 and you want to be anti-establishment, which they don't want to be, but if they wanted to be, they wouldn't choose rock because that's the music of the establishment. It'd be like when we were kids, like choosing Sinatra as our music, you know what I mean? Because that's like, the music that our grandparents listened to. It's like, that's not what we relate to. You know what I mean? And I think also back then, I mean, people, especially people like under the age of 30, let's say, they don't recognize how dangerous and like transgressive people people saw rock and metal music as being in like the 80s and 70s. I mean, like in the 60s even. I remember they called like acid rock, like, you know, Zeppelin and Hendrix and Cream. That's like acid dropout music. You know, that's not music that respectable people listen to. And in the 70s.
Iron Butterfly.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. And all that kind of stuff. And then like, you know, in the 70s when you had like, you know, Deep Purple and Rush and AC/DC and
Dude,
Van
Led
Halen.
Zeppelin.
Yeah, exactly. That was seen as like dangerous music, like that dirtbags listen to and scumbags listen to. And in the 80s, it was like, oh my God, these are people talking about sex and partying and stuff like that. Like, we can't have our daughters see this because they might want to go.
Well, and the embracing of the occult.
Yeah, that's true. But like,
you know,
like listen, like Poison, Motley Crue, Rat, Def Leppard, that Whitesnake, that kind of stuff. The mainstream kind of rock music in that time was all about partying and sex and driving cars.
Well, plus they, you know, to put it crudely, they dressed like girls.
Yeah, that's true.
And wore makeup.
And they were in the videos like pounding chicks and stuff. You know, that was like, you know, that's
like actually pounding them.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that it was dangerous because what would happen is like if you like go to like Oklahoma City, some pastor's worried his daughter's gonna be waiting outside the bus to go blow Bret Michaels.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And you know,
rock and roll needs to be Kevin Bacon and Footloose.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be a disruptor for sure.
Absolutely, dude. And it just, you know, it's yeah.
What's kind of devolved into though now is just sort of another niche. It's another genre. It's like, you know, music that people of a certain age like, or people who are like the weirdos. Like, it's not seen as cool. Like back when I was a kid, like listening to Metallica gave you some cred. You know, listening to Van Halen give you cred. That's like, oh man, those guys, he digs Van Halen.
Right.
He's Guns N' Roses. That gave you cred. That you were into that stuff. That means you were cool.
Right.
You know
well, I mean, Metallica's had no cred since the early.
No,
90s.
we're talking back when we were kids though. That's back in the day of Metallica. Like if you had a Metallica shirt on, you were like seen as super cool.
Right.
Like 1988 or something. You know what I mean?
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah. And same with Van Halen and all that stuff. You know, those bands, Guns N' Roses, that was considered super cool if you're into those things. And
wholeheartedly.
But not like niche-y like it is now. Now it's like, okay, that's stuff my dad listens to, or that's something that my friend Joe, who's got like his little couple of guys who like rock into my high school, listened to. Back then, everybody listened to that. That was like the cool music. You know what I mean? And not that I need to tell you because you were there, but.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
So there's a great article in The Atlantic, which I encourage everybody to read.
Yes.
That is like the best.
You mean just in general read? You should read.
I encourage everybody to read, to get hooked on phonics, and to pick up
Start
a copy of The Atlantic.
Some Dr. Seuss books and work your way up from there. You know
I mean? There's for anyone who's concerned about being well informed, I highly recommend that publication.
All right, yeah. Well, it's got real journalists working there,
right? Op-eds from columnists across the political spectrum, but everybody is a good faith actor, and the quality, and it's not all. It's also culture stuff. So to that end, there's an article recently from The Atlantic. Titled "The Joys of Geriatric Rock,"
which is so horrible sounding when you hear that. But although, you know, it's funny, that ties into, we talked about this before. Like I saw the Night Ranger concert on an Access TV the other day.
Wow!
And it was great. I mean, the band still brings it, and they still crush, and killer solos, killer songs. And then they pan to the audience, and you're like, "Oh, okay, no, we shouldn't be showing the audience here. This is, you know." No one needs to see 67-year-old grandma in the halter top, you know, in the mini skirt, you know, and then like there's like the Joe, the bank manager.
Well, so here's the question.
Like, not there's anything wrong with being a bank manager or being, you know,
a 67-year-old grandma.
Yeah, it's just like
the halter top is debatable.
I just think like
you rock it.
That just shows you how like, okay, that's music of their youth. Those people are now in their like mid 60s, you know, that kind of thing, you know, and that's still cool that they love it and will show up and rock out. But that just shows you that it's not like the music that like there's not a 20-year-old in that building,
right?
You know what I mean? And so go ahead.
So the article centers around being at a Tubes concert, right? And I guess they're playing.
She's a Beauty. Talk to You Later.
Talk to You Later. It's such a fun song, dude.
Steve Lukather, by the way, played the solos and wrote both those songs.
Hell yeah, right? The
Steve Lukather of Toto fame and just amazing guitar player fame. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. If you guys don't know the songs we're talking about, you should listen to them after this podcast.
You probably have heard them. I'd be surprised if you hadn't. They're the most famous Tubes songs. Yeah.
So you know they're playing in a theater. It's you know like seats 500 people, something like that. I mean, it's a small venue, I guess. You know, and the author, you know, is you know, makes the point that there's nobody under the age of 40 in the audience, but that's rad. and here's the line, and here's the line in the article that really got me.
Did it really get you?
It did. It really got me now. I mean, I'm just an 8-man.
It really got you going.
Yes. Yes. Well, man, Lola, what a great song. Also subversive.
I know, but let's.
So anyway, okay.
Tubes.
So
Yeah,
she's like, the author, there's nobody under 40 in the crowd. And that's great because all the songs are about sex and drugs, right? Now the
That's
band,
what we were just talking about. The 80s.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the band isn't trying to act like everybody in the Tubes is in their 70s now,
Yeah.
right?
They're even older than people in the audience, and yeah.
But they're being totally authentic. Like there's a part of the set where the lead singer Fee Waybill, who, by the way, if I were Fee Waybill, I would totally make bets with people all the time.
That's not your name.
No, I would wager just on stuff. Like I'd gamble all the time. Like
or you
the score of the
go
basketball
work in
game.
an accounting department. And I'm Fee Waybill.
So that whenever I won, I could say, it's time to pay the fee.
Or the Waybill.
Yeah, well, that too.
It's
yes.
Waybill.
Yes, your Waybill's overdue.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the most fun name anybody could ever have.
It seems unlikely that's a name. It's almost like someone fell down on like a keyboard and just that's what came up on the screen. Like, we'll name this kid this. You know what I mean?
I mean, maybe he's like Irish or something. I don't know. Fee Waybill. It's so great frontman name.
Yeah,
too much fun.
Unusual, yeah.
So like he looks over at the stage. There's a song where he's supposed to put on like these like platform shoes or whatever. Yeah, I mean the band used to do like outrageous live shows with costume changes. And
Yeah. They were like a theater thing as much as
and Fee gets to the part and he just looks at the shoes and just goes, nah, fuck it. And I dig that, right? So they're not trying to be something they're not, but it's also cool that there aren't like stupid kids in the audience.
Yeah,
because,
that being said, though, you would like to pass it on to the next generation. You want to have people pick it up on music, you know what I mean?
So here's the line that got me in the article. Oh, man, now I'm going to screw it up. Maybe I'm going to have to paraphrase.
Maybe it didn't get you as much as you thought.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Girl, you really almost got me.
It was rock and roll is not family entertainment.
Oh, I get you. Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, damn right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's the thing you get in trouble with from your parents because you snuck out to the show.
Right.
That's what it should be. You know what I mean?
Rock and roll is not family friendly.
Yeah.
It should not be family friendly.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's the main issue that's causing rock to be like what it is now, as much as it's just I don't think the next generation has picked it up as their thing. I think that's the bigger issue. I don't think it's because I don't think that like a Twisted Sister song is going to be any less relevant now than it was back in the day. I don't think like a Rat song is going to be less relevant. I think it's just that.
Well, I mean, We're Not Gonna Take It was appropriated for Arnold Schwarzenegger's gubernatorial campaign
during other political campaigns,
during an ill-advised recall.
Yeah, that was
But
I was Team Gary Coleman during those days.
Yeah, I'm still Team Gary Coleman. I think they should just
there was a porn star too. We actually had the governor porn star. That would have been pretty cool too.
Yeah, this came up with somebody else recently. What was her name?
I can't remember. It doesn't matter.
I don't remember either.
But that'd be pretty cool. Like California, the first state with a porn star governor. You know what I mean? Has an OnlyFans account going on while in office.
Dude, that's going to be the controversy of tomorrow. Yeah, like, politician has OnlyFans account.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
I'm sure. Well, okay. Anyway, I can name names. We'll back off from that.
No, you're right though. Like rock and roll, like an Ozzy Osbourne concert was something that people used to picket and they would follow around and try and protest. The bands like Judas Priest and Twister would get pulled in front of Congress to testify about what their stuff is. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
How dangerous it is to the youth. There's laws passed to try and rein in rock and roll.
Yep.
Back in the day, it was, people went to court and sued them saying that their kids killed themselves because of this music. You know what I mean?
Dreamer Deceiver. A couple kids blew their faces off and everybody got mad at Judas Priest.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what rock and roll was in the eyes of a lot of people back when we were
in the
kids.
media. Yeah,
when we were kids,
it was stuff.
Yeah,
right.
Was it the Dirty Dozen or whatever? They had a bunch of these. They're too sexy or whatever. You can't. What did they call it? It was like too like it was blunt language, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember Warrant had the Ode to Tipper Gore.
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. And
Tipper Gore, if you guys don't know, obviously the former wife of the ex-vice president Al Gore, and she started something called the PMRC, which is the Parent Music Resource Center, which was job was to try and label and minimize the impact of different bands that they saw as being like dangerous to the youth,
right?
That kind of thing, and that was something that a lot of the most popular bands in the late '80s, early '90s were kind of flagged because it was about sex and partying and stuff like that. And
right.
it was
what they thought was transgressive gender wise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, for sure. Like definitely very, very patriarchal sort of view that women are objects of pleasure. That's all they are. You know what I mean?
Like if you're not offending the puritanical cohort that exists in this country, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what rock and roll is all about. It's from the beginning, from the very beginning.
Elvis,
Elvis, Chuck Berry, you name it. You know, and even like Jerry Lee Lewis and all that stuff. I mean, there's all those like original rock stars, Buddy Holly. You know, those guys were originally, that was what it was, and then that just went all the way unabated until the grunge thing. And then the grunge thing became, look how sad and no one understands me. I don't understand. No one gets my genius.
Well, I mean, the only way to understand grunge is that that was just the corporations finally taking hold.
Nah, that's not true. I think grunge was about, well, I mean, the switch was them
taking hold.
The switch was them saying like, okay, we're going to market this whole new thing. We're going to open up this whole other market that we didn't have before. But they didn't realize that nobody wants to be that. Like nobody wants to be the weird whiny kid in the corner. You know what I mean? They want to be the David Lee Roth jumping off the thing and then banging 2 porn stars backstage. That's what people want to be. They don't want to be the
porn star theme on
you know what I'm saying? But like, that's what David Lee Roth, like, I'll pick the 10 hottest chicks that'll be waiting for me backstage. You know what I mean? And I'm going to jump off the risers and look like a god. Right. That's what people want. They don't want to be like, I am so weird and no one gets me and I'm so dark and twisted. No one wants to be that. You know what I mean? It may give voice to people who feel that way, but that's not the people anyone aspires to be.
I mean, the only way to understand it is money.
Yeah,
it was a
failed marketing campaign that lasted.
Well, it succeeded for a little while.
For a while,
and then
so did New Coke too. New Coke was a thing for a minute. You know what I mean? And the grunge is like grunge is the new Coke.
There's a joke about like real '80s Coke in here somewhere, but I'll step back to that line. Yeah. Well, and David Lee Roth, and that just wraps right back into that too. Yeah, totally.
But no, that grunge is like the new Coke of rock and roll. And then just like, but instead of coming back to the original recipe, they said, you know what? Screw it. We're going to make it. Now it's going to be Red Bull. With like cough syrup or whatever it is. And then it became like corn and Limp Bizkit and you know what I mean?
So depressing.
And then then no one cared about that after a while. Then it became.
But then also, so then a lot of the fans that were disaffected by that change, the casuals got sucked up in the Garthpocalypse.
Yeah, because what they were doing is they're offering, we'll sing about beer and titties.
But we love Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I mean, though. But they took up that mantle that Poison and Motley Crue once filled. It's like, oh, we'll party. We like to have a good time here. We'll have big shows.
Right, but they're not but they're not upsetting the pastor from Footloose. That is not rap.
That's fairly true, but I think they picked up that good time big rock show thing that kind of fell out of favor of rock.
But it's totally non-controversial.
To a degree. I mean, I think that's true. Although there's, I think some of the female stars in the country at that point started becoming a little too sexy, like making them, they were kind of like their bodies became almost like a pop star kind of thing. Like I'm thinking of Shania Twain's, Faith Hill's of the world.
Well, on the other hand, the Dixie Chicks' career got ruined.
Well, that was
spoke out.
That's also part of a very specific political time.
Good on them.
By the way, rest in peace. I guess the founding member just passed away.
Oh yeah, that's too bad. And didn't she kind of get a raw deal anyway?
All of them did. They really did. They were very.
Well, but even before that, like she was like the woman who just died. Was in like the original iteration of Dixie Chicks, and there was sort of like a not so amicable split.
Oh, I don't know anything about any of that.
I think it was something like the record label wanted them to drop her or something like that, and so they were like, "Peace out, sweetie." And I could be completely wrong.
Something Metallica should have done with Lars Ulrich back in the day. Yeah.
Man, I don't know, man. James is kind of my least favorite in that band.
Yeah, he's more talented though. That's the thing. I mean, the guys in that band, he's probably the most talented.
Without Cliff.
Well, I mean, I think the most accomplished musician in the band is definitely Robert Trujillo.
So when the most accomplished musician in your band is the bass player, you've got problems.
And that's the 90s right there, man. Look at every band in the 90s.
Yeah, totally, dude.
The drummers and bass players were the best musicians in the bands in that, back in those days. So I don't know. Now it's devolving into just to talking shit about the 90s. Like we tend to do. It's like we're like a shopping cart with a bad wheel that pulls right. No matter
that's all right. I'm trying to pull us back in. So we're living in a time where like all media is is trying to be family friendly to take your money.
Yeah, but I think the reason that's happening is because it's very difficult to actually get a mainstream audience anymore because everything's so fragmented. So the only way you can do that is by trying to aim towards everybody. And so if you have like these very niche-y things, you're going to inherently cut down on what audience you could possibly reach. So you have to sort of go to everybody, and that's why everything's becoming more and more that way, because it's more and more of a desperation to reach the biggest audience possible.
And you just described what's wrong with Star Wars.
No, I don't agree. That's a whole other conversation. It's a whole other conversation.
Great art isn't family friendly.
Well, I don't know that that's true. I think they can be family friendly. I think it depends on what you're making. I think that might be a personal preference, but I don't think that that's something that's true across the board.
If you're changing your art to,
I would say like Return of the King from Lord of the Rings is something that accomplishes all those goals. It's still friendly to like 12, 13-year-olds, but it's a great movie and a great story.
Yeah, they still made some plot changes in that.
Well, they had to fit the thing, but I mean, I'm just saying like that's a great movie with great stuff that is family friendly.
Fellowship is great.
Yeah, I think all three of those movies are amazing. I'm a huge fan of that altogether. But I don't know. See, we don't agree on the Star Wars thing. When I think that's gonna be like a dead end street that we'll just go down beating each other in the head with. So,
well, I mean, it's anyway.
That being said, I think
I think rock and roll is the same way, right? Like it shouldn't.
But do you think it is though?
Because
there's definitely bands out there that are doing stuff that's pretty aggressive and raw and laying it bare. I mean, I don't think that that's across the board true. I think what's happened is people have no attention span anymore, and that what they do pay attention to is so fragmented. It's not like it's like one thing. Like when we were kids, there's like 10 channels on TV, and then there's like with radio and movies, and that was it. That's like all
I think that's a factor too. I guess I'm kind of like getting more at like the quality of what's out there, and well, so I guess. The other thing that cemented this for me, I was hanging out with some friends at a social gathering and like work colleagues.
Okay, I like how you're being very nebulous about it. Like some friends at a gathering.
Well, I'm trying.
Other people were there.
I'm trying.
We were speaking to one another.
I'm trying to keep everything evergreen by not like citing what the occasion was.
I respect that. Damn it, Ryan, I respect that.
Yeah, so I was at a gathering with some work colleagues, and we talk about music and stuff, and somehow the topic of Nickelback came up. I was talking with some friends who play in like cover and tribute bands and stuff, right?
Yep.
And it was like, why do people hate on Nickelback so bad? And I think it's it's more of like a primal like reason why people like feel ick about Nickelback. It's because like you hear heavy guitars and there's like some cool riffs and stuff.
And some of the deep cut stuff is real heavy in Nickelback, actually.
Yeah, Nickelback is completely non-offensive. Nickelback is so milquetoast. There's nothing about them.
I don't know that that's to me a disqualifier. I think that you have good and bad music, and then you can have good music that's aggressive and sort of dangerous, and you can have bad music that's aggressive and dangerous too.
Well, true.
You know what I mean, I think that being transgressive and trying to be offensive is not necessarily an indicator of great music. I think that both those things can exist at the same time, and both of them cannot.
Well, of course. I mean, I'm not being an absolutist about it. I just think, I think there's something that people hear the heavy guitars and they hear the aggressive like music and stuff, and then they're expecting I believe, here's my theory, like on a deep, visceral.
Hey, just so everyone knows, Ryan is currently putting his tinfoil hat on his head right now. I'm
trying to embrace my lizard brain, right? Because we're all just monkeys who wear clothes.
Jump on Twitter, that'll help you. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm sorry, X.
Yeah, oh God. So since we're all just monkeys who wear clothes, I think there's some like like when you hear the music.
It's maybe an anti-Canadian thing. Is it Canadian?
I don't know. I like Bryan Adams, but I don't know. I mean, he's
another hugely controversial.
Right, yeah. Sir Bryan Adams.
Look into my eyes, God!
Okay, right.
Stop him! Someone must stop this madman.
Oh my
Keep
God.
our children away from him.
Yeah.
He's going to run to us.
So you hear the heavy drop tune guitars and the heavy, like you hear, it's heavy rock music. It doesn't stand for anything. It's not subversive in the least. It's not transgressive at all. It like, you know what? Like the leader of your youth group won't be pissed if you're listening to Nickelback. They stand for nothing. They're completely empty. They're not offending anybody and never have.
Yeah, but there's a lot of great rock bands that I think more, I mean, I don't know, was Rush transgressive? I mean, it was.
Yeah, actually Rush courted controversy.
Well, only because of the Ayn Rand thing.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing, man.
Yeah.
know.
But I'm trying to think, like, what band? There's been other band. I mean, I don't know that Van Halen was really particular. I mean, I guess the sex part. It was
of
like
course they were. It was hypersexualized.
Yeah. And Zeppelin, same thing too. Yeah.
And Jimmy Page, embraced the occult, right? Like all those
Hendrix
symbols.
with the drugs and sort of the counterculture kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. Jimmy Page, like the Zoso symbol, all that
Scorpions?
stuff.
The Scorpions, terribly controversial.
You know what? Well, Scorpions were.
Then they had that one album cover with the chicks,
like Virgin Killer. That was controversial, right? Not to mention, like, they were German.
Yeah.
You know, they were like the first young generation after World War II.
Them and Accept, right? Those are like the two big ones.
Yeah, to go out onto the world stage and be like, "Hey, everybody, we're not
is
the
Halloween
prior
German?
generations." I think they're Swedish.
So okay, maybe
Kai Kiski. I want to say Halloween is Swedish.
Okay, so you're Northern European,
more Nordic or something. Yeah. Well, so Halloween, embracing the occult.
Yeah.
Right?
And brazenly in being pro pumpkin, which I think is just, dangerous. That was a stand that had to be made. I'm glad they did it,
have you ever just tried to eat raw pumpkin? I mean,
terrible.
That's risky,
I do love pumpkin though. I gotta be
pumpkin spice. Yeah.
No, pumpkin pie, man. We just came out of, never mind. I don't know what season we just came out of. I mean, it could be any time of year. I mean, pumpkin pie is delicious at any time.
Talk about like really doing an original member wrong. Like after the Spice Girls hit it big, they never took pumpkin spice along with them.
So Starbucks resurrected in her memory.
Right. I mean, it would have been smart for management to have kept pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin spice.
It's
seems kind of obvious.
It's just hard to build a sexy costume around pumpkin,
but it was just the anti-pumpkin agenda that they were pushing.
So
that's why Halloween came out and said, okay, we are pro pumpkin. We must take a stand,
Yes. Well, I mean, and like gourds everywhere felt left out.
Exactly. Like, oh man, this is not for us.
All the gourd farmers, we're feeling attacked.
Exactly.
Right?
And I think, well, thank God we have at least Halloween raising the, rallying the troops.
Raising the pitchfork with the pumpkin on it, yes.
Raise our fists.
Anyway, so like all those bands you just listed, right, courted controversy.
Yeah, I think either that
Nickelback doesn't. They're non-controversial because it's the blandest ass crap.
Sex, and I think a lot of the '80s bands were very like sex, chicks, naked chicks, sex.
Well, Vince Neil had the drunken car wreck that killed Razzle.
That's kind of part of like the
terrible, but
that feels like part of like the rock star thing, though. Like throwing TVs out of windows and getting in car crashes, and
the wild lifestyle and all that.
Not trying to live to be an old man.
Which I'm, that's not, I'm not advocating for that behavior, but I'm just saying those bands were dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's part of what the whole, same with like Van Halen, like
Guns N' Roses was dangerous.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But they were also all good at music, okay?
That's
so
true.
I mean, Nirvana kind of claimed some of that dangerous stuff, but they were bad at music. So we kind of lost, right?
Yeah, then it turns out that, Dave Grohl, the drummer in that band, actually would be eventually good at music.
Right.
With a few years of training.
But Foo Fighters is just completely non-controversial.
It's Nickelback. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing, right? That's probably why, it's just too Disney family friendly.
I'm torn on Nickelback because I think Nickelback is good at what they do. I think they write good songs. I think they're good musicians.
It's meh.
I know, but that's a matter of opinion too. I mean, for some people that's going to be, there.
There's nothing dangerous about Nickelback. There's nothing exciting about Nickelback.
Here's some bands that I love that I don't think Styx is particularly dangerous. I don't think REO Speedwagon is particularly dangerous. I don't think, that, Night Ranger was particularly dangerous. I don't think that the Foreigner was particularly dangerous. To me, those are all great bands, and to me that's,
Okay, so Foreigner, there's,
the fact that they're not from here. Is that what you're going to say?
Right. Foreigner.
Goddamn Foreigners.
Night Ranger, they do all their rangering in the dark. They're not rangering in the day.
They do it at night so they don't scare the wildlife. That's why they do it at night.
Right. They're not Stephen really Walker, Texas Ranger.
Exactly.
They're Night Ranger. Exactly. It's like Knight Rider and
They do it at night so as to not disturb the wildlife.
They probably have like a talking Trans Am.
And Styx, they name themselves after a river of the dead.
So Styx, well, there you go. Yeah. So, Styx is kind of proggy too. Right?
Not controversial though.
Yeah.
I don't think Come Sail Away is totally controversial. You bastards! I'm anti-sailing.
Yeah, so they're not the...
I mean, I just think there's a bunch of bands.
I don't really think of Styx as really being like a rock band.
There's a lot of bands in the rock world though that are not controversial that are still great.
Foreigner still had that like kind of hypersexualized swagger.
Yeah, but no one really even knew what that band was about. They were great songs, just awesome songs, but there wasn't like a star. Like, that's not like a David Lee Roth. Like, oh my God, that's the front man of Foreigner. It was just kind of Lou Gramm was just a great singer. in the great band. You know
right.
what I mean?
So I mean, and like some of their stuff could probably be classified as kind of like soft rock.
Yeah, but some of it's more straight ahead hard rock too. I mean,
totally.
But the point I'm trying to make though is there's a lot of bands that weren't controversial who were also still great. I think I would put Rush in that category. They were not really controversial. I think that they were just more like thinking man's rock. So they were kind of.
You know what's controversial about like Rush is controversial in sort of a Revenge of the Nerds kind of way.
Thanks for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast with Ryan and Scott. Please make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast. Now let's get back to the show. I guess so, but
you know what I mean?
That's
like
a band that won just by endurance and just like outlasting everybody.
Well, it won
and being great at what they do. So it's like,
yeah, I mean, Rush is the Revenge of the Nerds of bands.
You know, that reminds me. There's a great quote from Steve Martin. I guess some young actor was asking him, some advice about how to get ahead in the business. Like, do you have to have a certain agency or do you have to talk to certain people? And what he said, and this is great advice for anybody in the arts, is be so good that they can't ignore you.
Yep.
And to me, Rush is like that. Rush is one of those bands that just was so great that they couldn't be ignored forever. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
They just outlasted their people who didn't like them. You know what I mean? The people who, Geddy Lee's voice. Well, they found the people who did love his voice, and then that was that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude. They absolutely, and then
the songs are too long. They're talking about all these weird things and stuff like
right.
And then they just Yes is a similar thing. Yes did the same thing.
And then they finally like won approval for their fraternity house from Lambda Lambda Lambda. They won the Greek Council.
But that wouldn't say terribly controversial.
Geddy Lee put on a Darth Vader mask and like slept with the head cheerleader at the Moon Bounce house. Rush made it happen, man.
But I mean, there's a lot of great bands that aren't controversial too. I don't think controversy. To me, it's a thing that should be a part of the essence. There's like a rebelliousness to rock and roll.
Yes.
I think everything's got to have. But I don't know that controversialness has to be part of it to be great. I think
controversy by way of rebellion.
I guess so. I think the dangerousness is you're onto something on that though. I think that the rock is not seen as dangerous anymore. I think that's totally true. Rock is not dangerous at all. It's the music my dad and my grandpa listened to.
Right. Like you shouldn't be able to bring your kids to a rock show.
Although thank God people are doing that because you need to introduce. I have so many of my students who are young, like 10, 11, 12, 13, who are huge Def Leppard fans, huge like Scorpions fans.
Let me put it this way. You shouldn't be able to bring your kids to a rock show if you're a prude.
What?
if you're the puritanical cohort, then.
But I mean, that's what's interesting is that people who are our age and stuff who've got kids and they're going to take their kids to listen to the music. They go take their kids to a Skid Row show or to a Motley Crue show or something like that. Because that's what they grew up listening to. You know what I mean? And they're going to try and pass it on, and the kids will either dig it or not dig it. Chances are pretty. I mean, one of the reasons there's such a big resurgence in bands like AC/DC, in Van Halen and Def Leppard and Motley Crue is because that music is just great. At the end of the day, what rebellious or not, it's great music, and it's something that you don't have to like talk someone into like liking.
You should take your kids to see Wasp.
Well, yes, it's true. They're great songs, though.
Go to the supermarket and like pick up some ribeyes. And then go throw him at Blackie Lawless while he sings "Fuck Like a Beast."
I'm sure he would love that.
Well, that's what they did at Wasp shows.
I know, but he seems like a reasonable fellow. I'm sure he'll be fine.
I mean, that's what you do. You have the raw meat fight with Blackie.
Yep.
While he sings "Fuck Like a Beast."
The point I'm trying to make though is that we need the young people to come and discover, those older bands, and there's the problem with a lot of the newer bands, and this is I'm taking this on a sidebar, and why it's not just the dangerousness, because there's a lot of good new bands, but I don't know there's any great new bands. I don't think there's any new bands that other than Ex Aegis. That's the one.
Well, Ex Aegis is great.
Shining light that is really holding.
And we're very controversial.
Much like like Atlas, we have the entire world of the future of rock on our shoulders.
Yes, exactly.
But no, I feel like it's not that they're not great players, and it's not that they aren't good performers, and that they don't have well produced albums, and they don't have good riffs. And those are all things that every one of the good new bands have. They just don't have great songs. Like all the bands we just talked about, like they are still huge from like 45 years ago. The one common thread that all of them have is great. Whether it be Styx or Rush or Foreigner or Motley Crue or Metallica, great songs.
Yep.
That Guns N' Roses, great songs.
So here's what rock music needs culturally. There needs to be a band with great songs, great musicians who also stands for something and offends somebody.
Yeah, well, it's something that can't be embraced by everybody. You know what I mean? That's
something that challenges status quos.
Things are very different now, though, than they were back in the day. I'm thinking of like the Me Too movement. I'm thinking of the cancel culture movement and stuff like that. So to me, it's very difficult to get a big backer behind you, which is all the bands we just talked about had. They had Atlantic Records, Sony Records, Geffen. They had all these major corporations pushing the music because there was money in that. Now it's very dangerous if there's only a handful of labels left, but they're all been Disney, Sony, Warner.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's plenty of stuff.
If you're offending somebody though, that's a dangerous place to put your money behind because that could get you boycotted. That could get you. Look at what happened to Bud Light recently. You know what I mean? When they took a stand.
Well, cheers to Bud Light though.
For sure. It's a courageous thing, but that's also a warning to all the other big corporations. Like, hey, if you jump on something controversial, this can happen to you too. And that makes people a lot more reticent to do it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think they should probably still do it. But that being said, it's dangerous. Yeah. It's much safer if you're a CEO and you have stockholders that you're accountable to do the safe thing than to go do the dangerous thing. Especially when there's billions of dollars or millions of dollars in the case of music at stake, to do that sort of thing.
Right. And of course, all of that happened, it also boils down to, this all boils down to the behavior of consumers.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everybody gets with the culture that they buy.
Yeah, that really bums me out, man, because,
Back in the day, though, it was like, I don't know, man, like it was dangerous, like stuff like Slayer or King Diamond or Merciful Fate was money because people would want it because it was the forbidden stuff, like forbidden fruit.
Dude, and you know what? Stryper too, right? Yeah. They just took the opposite stand with their.
But they had the same effect,
which was it also controversial.
And back in the 80s too, in the 70s and 60s for that. Well, 70s and 80s more. The 60s was a little bit more egalitarian, but the 70s and 80s, like the misogynistic sort of like chicks are there for pleasure. Let's see some titties kind of thing was a big deal in rock, and that was another big like Motley Crue. I'll never forget when I was like 12 or just old seeing the Home Sweet Home video and there's like a chick flashing her tits and like that was like really dangerous. Like, oh, my mom shouldn't see. I can't see.
Well, that's a whole other. Man, that's a whole other topic. But no, right? Misogyny in rock. We need to get Judith back on the podcast.
That's totally true.
That. Yeah,
but I mean that was a. I don't know. That was a big selling point back then. That's something that.
Well, they were selling sex.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
and if you're a 12-year-old boy and you see a video where one of your favorite rock bands has a chick flashing her naked tits, and if your mom walked in and I know that you'd be in big trouble, that was like really, oh man, this is so dangerous.
Yeah, this is, right? Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Agreed.
This is seeing something I shouldn't be seeing.
Man, I miss that.
But that's like what it was back then. Lita Ford like humping her guitar in the video was like it was a danger. You hope your parents didn't walk in when you're watching.
Well, and might I mention that Lita Ford was also totally empowered, like playing awesome guitar.
But a big part of why she got
so it wasn't misogynistic.
There was three things going on with Lita Ford, and I still a fan of Lita Ford. She was definitely selling her body, no doubt. Number two, she actually could play, and number three, she had good songs. So I think all those things. So all those things were all at play for that. But it would be disingenuous to say that she wasn't selling her body as part of that.
Well, no, of course. I mean, there's the image factor, of course. Yeah. Yes, I just I'm just reluctant to say misogynistic as far as
but the sex thing was definitely a big part of her sell. It was like I'm a sex goddess.
Well, right. Well, and she knew that. Yeah, and she did that. And she profited from it.
And that's what was the big part of that package. But that was something that wouldn't fly now. Well, like I said, maybe it would. I mean, look at Megan Thee Stallion. Look at what's the other rapper? What's the rapper name? What's the other one? Cardi B.
Right? Yeah.
Like that. There's like a bunch of them, but like we're overtly selling their sexuality. You know what I mean?
Well, again, I'll take us back to. We're all monkeys who wear clothes.
Yeah.
We're mammals.
Yeah.
We, people, mammals have libidos. And,
but I mean, that's something that marketers knew and would use to sell a product. And then I don't know that kind of overt, especially from a male, like, if you watch like some of those videos from back in the day, even like the ZZ Top videos, like with the chicks there, they get the guy in the car and then the chicks all jumped in the car with him and stuff, that kind of like, I guess it would be seen as misogynistic by some people, like that sort of women are only valuable as tokens of pleasure for men. That kind of thing, that kind of idea is something that was very, very salient in the 80s.
Yeah, I just don't think that says that women are only valuable as that. It's context. It's just one, he's a sharp dress. I mean, part of it's kind of the joke too, because he's like a scruffy, like kind of
mechanic guy or whatever. And
a dude with like a 4 foot long beard, he's obviously not a sex, Billy Gibbons isn't a sex symbol.
No, I get it. But I mean, but that was part of the culture. That was in the zeitgeist of the culture that time. Like that sort of like,
I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying
that sort of,
but not all of it is misogynistic.
That sort of overt kind of sexualizing of women is not something that would fly nowadays at all. I don't think that, because when you look at any rock video, what they show now, they show disaffected kids like angry and sad.
Well, I mean, there's other ways to, there was also a recent article. I mean, it doesn't have to be just that, right?
No, of course not.
There's other ways.
But we're talking about what makes rock dangerous and what makes like things.
Dude,
that,
you know what? Give me a kick-ass rock band that embraces glam again. Put on some makeup and high heels. Go dress. Get a bunch of dudes dressing up like girls and go fucking rock.
Yeah, but there's some bands, we've talked about some bands that do that. Like Santa Cruz is a band that totally did that. You know what I mean?
Oh, like currently?
Yeah, well, it came out like a couple years ago.
Nice.
I mean, that being said, it might be about 15 years now at this point. But, I remember first time I saw that band, I was like, dude, these guys are really doing it. They're like really, and then what's the band, Wings of Steel or whatever it was we just saw.
Yeah, they embraced some of that, although they weren't like
a little bit more priest than like
dude, give me like a heavy metal band comprised of all drag queens, and I'm there for it.
Dude, that would be very dangerous nowadays for sure.
That would be badass. Where's my drag queen?
We had
metal
that. That was
band?
called Poison.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, like, bring something like now's the time.
Yeah, that's true. That would be considered really dangerous nowadays.
Because those same forces in our society are, gaining traction that are.
I always talk to my kids
upset by that,
because my kids are very upset about the puritanical voices you're talking about, the puritanical, and I always think that's just the last bastion of someone who's already lost the war. They're just holding whatever territory they can until they inevitably lose it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm in time, yes, but dude, I'm 45 now, man.
I know that's not going to be a world we get to live in. Right? It's not going to be a world we get to live in. It's not.
That sucks.
But that's going to happen at some point. It's inevitable that's going to happen. You know what I mean?
So for right now, I'm putting it out there. Okay, like if there are any drag queens out there that shred on guitar,
which I'm sure there definitely are,
I want to support your album.
Yep. For sure. Absolutely. I mean, honestly, just anybody shredding on guitar for that matter, just freaking bring
that as well. Yeah. Right.
The world needs that.
So just a band that, okay, so here's my ideal band to bring rock and roll back. Okay. It needs to be like 2 guitars, right? All drag queens.
Okay.
And they all are members of the Satanic Temple.
Okay, I had a feeling that was coming.
Of course. Well, you gotta throw in the occult, right?
Ghost skulls and pentagrams and
Yes. Oh, that'd be the best thing ever.
I mean, it's kind of a version of Ghost, really, if you're describing it.
Well, yeah, kind of. Well, I mean, and Ghost is part of like a long line of the occult bands, and Ghost is awesome too.
I know, you're describing a drag queen version of Ghost, basically, is what it comes down,
Ghost Queen.
Ghost, there you go.
Dude.
Give the name.
Oh, damn. See how this idea is rich?
Exactly. And somebody will capitalize on it for sure.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. And then launch a tour through the American South. Right? Like, kick off the tour in Kentucky. and then do a few dates in Alabama.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll go over really well. It's funny that whoever is like into the counterculture in that area will show up for sure.
Yeah, guaranteed. In all seriousness, right? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? You could probably like play Mobile, like whatever the biggest venue.
The dangerous thing about that is that really America is divided, but it's almost divided between like urban and rural. It feels like if you go to like Mobile, Alabama, which is a city, it's going to be probably just very similar to being in Sacramento or San Jose. It's a city. If you go outside of that, that's when you start getting into those differences. And I think even in California, as much as people think of California as being super left leaning, and largely it is, but that if you go out into the rural areas that aren't, and now granted, one thing, if you aren't from California, like almost this entire state is city. Almost everywhere you go, it's almost like Coruscant in Star Wars. It's like literally, it's like all city, like with very little. Up north, there's a little bit more country.
It's not quite Coruscant because it's not like littered with like pacifiers and diapers and like my golden book.
My point still stands, though.
Like baby cribs,
but like the rural parts of California are very much like the rural parts of anywhere.
Sure,
you know what I mean. And I think that's really, if you go to I don't know, Wyoming, you were go to like Casper, Wyoming. It's a city. I'm sure it's going to be very similar to being in any other city. If you go to the rural part of Wyoming, it's going to be, like going, and I just have, my experience tells me that everywhere is like that. So if you go to like, Atlanta, Georgia, that's going to be very similar to being in, say like San Francisco.
Yeah. I mean, Atlanta's a major metropolitan statistical area in MSA, folks.
If you go 20 miles out of that, then it's totally different. You know what I mean? And so it's,
well, and that's great because maybe, there's also the power of the internet, right? So if you're like that rural kid and you like oh man, Ghost Queen is going to be within 100 miles.
Yeah, I'm gonna drive.
Dude, me and my friend are going to load up in the truck, and my parents hate it.
Yeah, they'd be so sad if they knew I was going or something like that.
Yeah, they'd be so pissed. Like, I'm going to lie about where I'm going.
That
so I
actually,
can go
you know,
see
that really
them.
sounds like we're trying to like conspire a way for them to have our childhood. Because like if we were to go see like a Rat show or a Motley Crue show or
Yeah.
a Metallica show or something like that, or Ozzy, it would be considered really dangerous, and we'd have to maybe buy our tickets on the sly and hide it from our parents and stuff like that. That's kind of thing that we would do when we were kids. You know what I mean?
That would be. See, that would be.
So you and I
awesome,
are just
dude.
trying to conspire a series of events that would allow that to happen for the next generation.
Yes.
The problem is next generation is like sitting in their bedroom on their phone listening to Spotify and then scrolling
Yep.
TikTok.
Yeah.
So they don't have
Yep.
any interest in pissing off their parents, which are their sugar daddies.
Oh,
You know
well,
what I
right,
mean?
because they're going to live with their parents until they're like 40.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Whereas we were out like at 19, like out the door as soon as we could
Dude,
get out the door.
18.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like as soon
Yeah.
as we could physically be doing it, we were out. You know, we had our driver's license at 16. We wanted to get out of the yoke from our parents when we were
Yeah.
kids. That's going to die with our generation, man. I don't think that's going to exist going forward. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
like moving out with
the idea of I want my independence like right away. As soon as I'm old enough, I got it. You know what I mean? That's
that is true.
that's not going to be something.
What a bummer.
It is a bummer. Maybe it'll get picked up again in the future. Who knows? But I feel like parents have gotten too kind. They're like too buddy with their kids, and too much like we're all in this together, and you know, let's make it comfortable for you, and then you have a right to.
Well, and then to be fair to the kids, you know, like housing costs are out of control.
Well, yeah, especially in California. For sure.
Right. I mean, you've got corporations buying up, you know, single family homes for investments, and then that's driving the price up in the housing market.
And there's a lot less market. There's a lot less inventory in the market too, so which makes it even more valuable because there's so
That's
little.
right.
Of that.
They're not building more houses.
That's-
Well, and then
that's
then
partially-
everybody's home values go up.
That's due to a lot of factors, of course. I mean, it has to do
Of course,
with
that's one of them,
regulation and how
Yep.
difficult it is to get new homes built and stuff, and
All of it.
And that stuff needs to be. You know, they'll get into politics at that
There's-
point. But
Well, I mean, this is like economics. Thing.
yeah,
But yeah.
but
There's, you know,
you're right. I think that's also a cultural thing too. I don't think that. I mean, like, just look at the music that they like. They like the most milquetoast music too. I mean, they listen to stuff that like has like a patina of some dangerousness to it, but it's not really dangerous.
well, I
music.
mean, they're all into like indie whatever, indie rock, folk.
Most people listen to
indie-
hip hop, man. Hip hop and EDM, which has got there's nothing there. Like EDM, there's like in hip hop, there's like nothing there. It's just like you know the most random nonsense.
Like music. Well, I mean, like if you're talking like you know instrumentally speaking. And,
Well,
you know,
EDM
like,
and
the
hip hop
way
I
it's
kind of throw in the
produced,
same
but,
kind of
yeah.
thing. It's like ambient music they put in the background.
You know what? I'd be lying if I told you, like, I don't know what the zeitgeist is in hip hop right now. I mean, there's always going to be the hip hop scene along with the horrors of the Garth apocalypse, you know, kind of stole the I'm going to sing about like drinking and partying.
Yeah,
and
I
stuff.
think that it's probably like any other genre. There's probably some great stuff going down, and there's some horrible stuff. And usually, the stuff that's most popular is the most main, down the middle, you know, stuff that it can
Yeah.
be. That's usually the way it is for any genre. You know what I mean? And I'm sure there's some awesome stuff going on that would rival like NWA and Eazy-E back in the day. You know,
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. It's just that we don't know about it. It's like there's great
Sure.
metal bands now that would rival Priest and Maiden, but they.
Oh,
but-
sure. Well, I mean, certainly in the metal world, I mean, like the talent and the skill has never been higher.
Yeah, but that being said, that the ability for people to recognize or hear that, and the mechanisms for that to get to the people is so much never been worse.
So
In terms-
again, you
it's-
know, get some like, you know, elite guitar players, like put on some drag outfits, right? Put together a band and go tour like the major arenas of the South and Texas.
yeah, I mean, or Midwest for that matter.
Yeah, in the Midwest, you know,
Indiana,
enough to where
Ohio, you know.
and you know what? Draw the picket signs, and then you know, hopefully, people will show up.
I don't know. I really question whether or not that controversy would be valuable. I really do nowadays. I don't know how that. Maybe
And then it goes viral on TikTok.
we would look
and
at
then all the
and then-
kids are at
and
home going
for that 5 minutes it'd be amazing, and then they'll forget all about it when the next viral trend.
Yeah, maybe
pops
you
up,
could make a lot of money in those 5 minutes.
I'm just saying that's like nothing's got staying power. Everything's like meant to come and go. Like right now, it's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
That being said, I do look forward to the idea of like Justin Bieber playing at like the Canocti Harbor like 40 years from now, having to sing, like trotting out with this like stupid haircut
Justin
still. And he's like
Bieber.
65 and stuff. You know, it's like that's gonna be hilarious. You know, I'm looking forward to. Like, the dude Madonna's still doing it. She's like still wearing lingerie and dancing around. She's like 70 years old.
You know what's great about Madonna right now, though, is that I guess there's like a part of her stage show where like the Grim Reaper comes and gets her.
Okay.
So like, I mean, again, good on her for being self-aware. Like,
I know, but like
she's got one foot in the grave.
But once you like get to a certain point where you're like paying, like I know Katy Perry's going to be singing Teenage Dream when she's 70. You know what I mean? Like playing at some casino somewhere, you know, playing at the Gold Country Casino in Orville or something like when she's 70, singing Teenage Dream to a bunch of 56-year-olds.
Katy
You know what I
Perry
mean?
at like Pechanga Canyon
Yeah.
Casino.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to happen.
I
It's
know.
for sure going to happen. You know what I mean? And I just think that's hilarious. And I think when people trash the older bands, like, oh, look at those guys are so old, like the Tubes, look, they're so old. It's like, well, dude, they've been successful for 40 years. You know what I mean? They started when they're 30 and now they're 70 and they've been successful for 40 years.
And the songs are good enough to hold up.
Yeah, people still want to hear it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For sure. I don't think that Katy Perry can say the same. I mean, maybe there's nostalgia for freaking Backstreet Boys. So what the hell do I know? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's hard to not get mired because algorithms are going to be like pushing stuff towards us that's nostalgia related just because it's our demographic, right?
Yeah, self-selecting samples and stuff. And I kind of wonder though, is the music of the last 10, 15 years going to stand up 30 years from now? You know,
I don't think so.
No, I don't either. And I think there's something magical that kind of ended in the early 90s. I think there's something that was like, it started in the 50s, because you listen to 50s music, 60s music, 70s music, 80s music, and early 90s music. And it's still great. There's no drop off at all from what it was fresh and new to now. It's still great. I don't feel like anything post that is going to be in that same thing, other than some kind of weird nostalgic sort of, this makes me think of when I was 12, you know, like when someone hears a Korn record and gets misty eyed. That's kind of, I remember back in 99 or whatever, you know, they're going to have this like weird nostalgic connection. It's not really even about the music.
Right. Well, I mean, those bands are like hitting the nostalgia circuit now.
Get ready for it, man. We're going to have a bunch of like, you know, of those 90s bands.
Limp Bizkit just played it like Aftershock or something.
Everclear and all these 90s bands are going to start coming out of the woodwork again.
Dude, Everclear was so
you know what I'm saying. It's all those like, you know, Limp Bizkit, Korn, Rage Against the Machine,
Sugar Ray.
Yeah, all those bands are going to have
started off as a good band.
They're going to start off with a big tour again. It's because people, you know, that's our generation right there. We're the grunge generation. So people who are in their mid 40s now are going to look back and say, oh man, remember when I was like 17, I remember seeing Sugar Ray and then Everclear or whatever, you know, that's going to happen. You know what I mean? And,
notice how Candlebox isn't on that list.
Well, they actually called it quits, I think, didn't they?
I hope so, for the sake of mankind.
Candlebox to me is like one of the least offensive of those bands. They played guitar solos in the 90s. I give them credit for that.
You know what? They were offensive because they were just a carbon copy after the first wave of grunge.
So was every other band, and that's
right.
I mean, that's just, you know, people talk about the 80s bands like, oh, every band looked the same. Like, oh, that didn't happen for grunge.
Right.
Yeah. And Korn, it's the same thing. Oh, Limp Bizkit's not just the same thing as Korn. Yeah, they're basically the same thing. You know, but all of them are terrible. I'm not going to give any credit to any of those bands. They're fucking horrific. Oh, yes. Hate them all. You know.
Okay, so we need. Man, it's too bad that Marilyn Manson really turned out to be a creep because he kind of captured that whole like androgynous but occultic and like rebellious.
But what's good music though too.
And it was good music, and he could pack stadiums, man.
Yeah.
So
for a while,
for a while, right? Yeah. So so I'm putting it out into the universe. Who is next? We need somebody. There needs to be like a shock rock, dangerous,
like a new Alice Cooper, basically kind of thing.
A new Alice Cooper, a new, a new King Diamond, a new Wasp, there's no shock rock out there anymore.
I think that the challenge for that to happen is twofold. One is like no big corporation is going to put money behind it. There's no major label. It's got to
be the groundswell.
And then also the ability for any new artist to reach a main audience, a huge audience, is almost impossible because everything's so fragmented. So the reason that like King Diamond was able to happen is because he came out at a certain time in a certain place, and he was able to get big money behind him for a while. You know, major labels putting out records like that, and it was controversial. Everyone was making money, everyone was happy. I think now there's no money to be made in controversy if you're a major label, and it's impossible to get enough eyeballs on it because every eyeball is torn in every direction. So it's like almost impossible. It'd have to be something that builds from the ground up over like 15, 20 years that eventually gets to the point where they can play theater.
You know, like Gwar. Yeah. Right? Where's the new Gwar?
Yeah, that's true, but Gwar is still a niche band too, though. I mean, that's not a band that, you know, if the people who are mainstream know about it, they know about it because they think it's so silly that this band exists. You know what I mean?
Whatever it is.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think the thing we should take away from this podcast though is that everyone's doomed. I think that's the
Oh, well, totally. I mean, the thing about life, folks, is that no one makes it out alive.
Yep, exactly. Nobody gets out of life alive. That's true.
So
I think that's the main thing to focus on.
You know, we're very lucky that we can get together once a week and just like talk about all this stuff because we're really just like on a rock out in the middle of nothingness.
An unbelievably vast nothingness.
Yes.
You can't even conceive of how vast this universe is.
Right.
You know?
The forces of which care not whether we live or die.
We are just a byproduct of natural functions that were going to happen anyway, whether we're here or not.
One in a long line of soon soon-to-be extinct species.
Yep, exactly right. That we will never be remembered at all in the future, and then eventually, when the sun becomes a red giant, and then it consumes all the inner planets of our solar system, and then becomes a white dwarf, it will just be a murky, distant outpost in the galaxy that's going to collide with another galaxy and destroy many of the solar systems. Yes. That's what the future holds.
And then reality will just collapse in on itself when there's no longer an observer.
That's not true either, because it's going to be perpetual genesis going forward, because the universe is infinitely going to expand, and it's just
And then somewhere else out there, the circumstances for life to exist. Well, there'll be a primordial soup somewhere.
Yep. And that actually the physics and the numbers tell us that there is already that happening, probably infinite numbers of that, because if the universe is indeed infinite and you have infinite rolls of the dice,
then every possibility,
even the most impossible thing, anything that can happen is going to happen. Meaning there's probably thousands of Brian's and Scott's recording podcasts right now in the universe. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. So now, well, I was going to say, is the universe infinite, or is it expanding?
It's expanding still. So the outer edge of it is that it's been doing it for so long that it effectively is infinite. We can't really, and then there's also the multiversal implications of quantum mechanics that go into that. So there's
superposition, Schrodinger's cat.
Exactly, and you can actually have the same exact thing happening in infinite positions at the same time.
Oh, dude, I just had a horrifying realization.
What's that?
Dude, there's a universe where there's a Scott and Ryan that have a podcast all about their love of 90s music.
Probably true. Probably does happen.
Oh God.
Or New Country. Mostly about
that's even worse.
Waxing philosophical about Luke Bryan or maybe in that universe it's like Brian Luke.
Welcome to the Keith Toby hour. Right.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's funny though. That's the point, is that reality doesn't make any sense. We make sense of it, but just because we have to, we have no choice. That's the reality we're stuck in. We're like prisoners in this reality.
Right. We have to collect resources to metabolize and survive.
Exactly.
Yes, right.
So, and that's basically what this whole thing's all about. So at the end of the day, everything else is just window dressing around that.
Correct.
And on that note, thank you guys so much for listening to the Rock Guitar Confidential podcast. Hopefully you're inspired.
Yes, hopefully you're inspired. So go put on those high heels, whoever you are.
And start shredding.
Shredding.
All right. Please make sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast, and make sure to check out our website, our band website. It's xaegisband.com. Ryan, what is that again?
That's www.exaegisband.com.
Oh, I was waiting for the com. And then you'll find our links to social media, so please make sure to follow us on social media. The Instagram is instagram.com/xaegis. The Twitter, as you probably, I guess X, I'm going to call it Twitter. It's still twitter.com/xaegis, Facebook.com, you guessed it, /X, I can't say it, xaegis. There's a lot of weird vowels going on there. All right, anyway.
Yes, I love how Elon Musk changed it to X after we released our debut album.
It was mainly inspired by us.
It was really, so if you're going to be pissed at anybody.
That's true.
We'll be pissed at Elon Musk.
Either that or the most forgettable Def Leppard album. One of those two. Those two things is true. All right, thanks for listening, guys. See you next time. You got it.